Hola dudes, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing something pretty special, something that I've been wanting to do for a while, and that is making some door panels for the Bug. Christian and I started making a few pieces for the door panels. These are for just one side. We have to make all the ones for the other side, which is what I'll walk you guys through. But this is going to be the armrest right here, so all blended in, nice aluminum. And then this is actually going to be a cup holder mount. This piece has to get a hole drilled in it for the cup holder to slide into. But this is the other part of it, so it'll sit like this on the door. That piece will get welded and blended on top, and then we'll have a nice cup holder to work with. Since the Bug doesn't have one, it'll be nice to finally have one and not have to carry my drinks. If you guys notice a quality difference on the video, it's because I'm filming in 4K, so if it looks better, just let me know down in the comments and I'll keep doing 4K in the future. Aluminum work is something that Christian and I don't do very often, so this is still kind of a learning curve for us, but from these pieces we can tell that we're going to have some fun doing it. And one thing that I've done for the first time on these pieces is I actually designed the pieces in SolidWorks beforehand and printed out the designs on paper. That makes things really easy because I can just trace them out onto a piece of aluminum, cut it out, bend it how it needs to be bent, and we know everything's going to fit perfectly together, and we don't have to spend a bunch of time making a template by hand. I wanted to very quickly hop into SolidWorks and show you guys how I make these designs and then how I transfer them to a piece of paper. And so this was my main design for the door panel with the cup holder up front and the armrest in the middle. And so I'm going to go through and show you how to make this part of the armrest. I'm not going to go super in depth with this tutorial because this isn't a SolidWorks channel and I'm just not completely knowledgeable on the program myself. So I'm going to go through with what I know and show you how I made this. And so this is an assembly right here of 3 different pieces, which is the top plate, the side plate, and the bottom plate, exactly how we're going to construct it in real life. And so we start here in a separate file, and I made this body, and that was done by making a 3D sketch and then using the boundary tool right here and then making it into an actual base. This piece is all dimensioned out, so it's all to the exact specifications that I've come up with. And now that we have this, we can start making the metal pieces that we'll make in real life. And so we go over to here to sheet metal, and you want to go to convert to sheet metal, and it's actually really easy to do this. You essentially click on the face you want, and since we're going to be doing the side plate, we'll start in the middle here, and then you can see if we hit right here, nothing's going to happen, but if you go on the edge, hit right there, it'll follow it all the way and go to the end exactly how we need it, and then we'll just go and do the same over here. So now we have both, and you can see the radius is set to default. So you could either leave it like that, or what I went and did is edited them and gone to 0.1 inches on both sides. So hit enter, and now we have both set that way. And the reason I did this was just because I figured I could get it close to that on the bench and that this would be realistic. Now we can go ahead and go up here to the OK button, hit that, and you can see it renders out our bent piece. And so from here, just make the boundary invisible, and here's the part that we have bent to all the exact specifications that we're going to need. And for each piece you're going to want to save them separately, so I'd save this exactly how it is and then go back, make the top plate, save that one, and then make the bottom plate and save that one. That way they're all separate and that we can print them out easily. And so to actually print them out, we're going to go to File, Make Drawing from Part. This is what you'll end up seeing, and we're going to want a custom size, and we're just going to make it to exactly what a piece of paper is going to be. So it's going to be 11 by 8.5. Hit enter. So you can see we have a normal piece of paper in front of us now, and on the right side we have a bunch of different selections we can choose from. We want the flat pattern because we're going to be transferring this to a piece of flat metal. So we'll grab this, drag it over, and you can see it pops down onto the piece of paper. But there's one issue, it's really small. Obviously this isn't how small the final design is going to be. So over here where we have the scale options, we want custom scale, and we want to choose 1:1, so it's the full size. And sometimes it does this, so I'm just going to hit OK, go back in and try and change it again. Custom scale 1:1. So now you can see we have our piece, but there's another issue, and that's that it's not going to fit on that piece of paper. So you want to hit it again, go in, and we're going to want to just rotate this a little bit to get it to fit correctly. So let's just try and go ahead with 30 degrees, and you can see it rotates it. Go ahead and move it down right there so you can see we fit in the piece of paper. Now you're just going to save this as a PDF, that way we can print it and cut it out on a normal piece of paper. So that's essentially how I made everything in SolidWorks for these door panels and transfer them to pieces of paper. If you have an issue where it's not going to fit onto a piece of paper no matter how you orient it, what I did on one piece is made this double width, and then it fit then, and when I went to print it, I actually taped two pieces of paper together and ran it through the printer, and it printed completely fine. But if you have anything super big, it's not really going to work out, so this is better for some smaller pieces. I've gotten a lot of questions concerning how I got this program and how I've learned to use this. I actually got this program through school, which is why you see the student edition down here in the corner. And everything I've learned has been self-taught through YouTube and just trial and error trying to figure out how to make things that I've wanted to. So if you guys want to see some more stuff on SolidWorks in the future, just let me know down below. These are all the designs that I have after printing them off the computer and cutting them out. I just use an X-Acto knife and a ruler, but you can use scissors as well. That'll work perfectly fine. The nice thing about having all these templates is it tells you exactly what you need to bend to, and it gives you the lines to reference to do so. So what I ended up doing is using this digital angle finder. This is just the one that we've been using, and I bent these exactly to the specification. As you can see, things lined up really well for us, and it came out perfect. Like most of you watching, we don't have a plasma table or a press brake, so we're going to be doing most of this by hand, but I'll show you some cheaper tools that you can use to make the job a lot easier. Once you have your templates, the first thing you're going to want to do is trace it out onto a piece of aluminum or steel or whatever you're going to be doing. This is just some 14 gauge aluminum that we had left over from doing the panels on the rear of this truck. Now that the design's marked up, I just clamped it down, and I'm going to be using some Eastwood electric shears to cut it out. These things are really nice on this kind of aluminum. It just makes it a lot quicker than a cutoff wheel. Just like that, we have our piece cut out. This side I was out a little bit, so I'm gonna have to grind more off of here than anywhere else. This right here, I was directly on line with the blue line, so clean things up, I'm just using an angle grinder with a floppy disk. It's just the fastest thing that I found and just makes things easy. As you can see, the piece is lined up exactly how it needs to be, and we have everything at the right dimensions. Now on these edges, it's a pretty sharp edge, so we're going to take that down and also prepare the surface for welding. So you can either use that same floppy disk, or I'm just going to use a tool that Christian and I have been using since it's pretty new to us and we've been enjoying using it. So this just has an abrasive wheel on it, nice little Milwaukee tool, and this will take the edge off perfectly as well. So you can see now there's no sharp edges. I can run my finger across this fine. Only on one side do you have to prepare the top like this. The other side I just took down the edge. This is just for the weld to make sure we have a clean surface. Now this piece is ready to get bent up. I'm just going to take the template, line it up, and then slide it down a little bit, mark it with the Sharpie where the end of this line is, and do the same on the bottom. And then I'll just take a straight edge ruler and draw a line right here. That way we know exactly where we need to bend. Now that we marked the piece, I'm just going to clamp it down. I'm clamping it to this table just with another piece of metal on top of it. That way we know when we hit this, it's going to bend directly at that crease and not anywhere else. I'll take this digital angle finder, set it down on the table. So now that it's zeroed out, we know when we set it on here, we'll have the exact angle that it's bent at. As you can see by the template, we have to go to 22.8 degrees. So the nice thing about this aluminum is that you can pretty much bend it by hand as well. So if you need to make minor adjustments, you can just bend it a little bit. So we need to come back just a little bit. Give that a try. 22.7. So I'm going to leave it right there. That's 0.1 degree off. So we're well within the range that we need to be. This piece is now done until we weld things together. This is the lower piece on the armrest. So right there, you can tell that's what it's going to end up looking like. Now I need to go ahead and make these two pieces right here, the side and the top. Once we have those pieces, we'll tack them up, weld it together, and then we'll get to blending this out. Christian was nice enough to weld this piece up for me. We're using this bottom plate for a few reasons. One, because it disperses heat a little bit quicker out of the piece, and two, because we can ground to it, so that makes things a lot easier. We don't have to try grounding to one of these pieces, and we can just sit here, and I held it together, he tacked it, and then he just laid some beads on here. The next step is to start blending, and to do that, I'm going to start with the flappy disc again, and I'm going to work by planes. That's how Christian and I figured out how to do it the best, and that's the method we chose to do on there. And what that means is we're going to start on this top plane, get all these welds flat according to this plane, and then I'll move to this one, get all of them flat along here, and then you'll just have a little bit extra that you'll go through with the angle grinder and kind of work back and forth and go over at an angle. So there's the first step of getting it level with the planes, and now I'm just going to go over real quick and just smooth out the last edge. So I got this one roughly blended in, and Christian's going to go ahead and finish it off to make it look like this. And what's kind of the process that you're using to get it to that point?
The process is you go from getting everything welded up. Jake went back with the flap disc on the angle grinder just to get the rough shape that we want. And then the next step is going to be using some Scotch-Brite discs.
Is that what that is? It is Scotch-Brite discs?
Yeah, these are Scotch-Brite discs. And then I have a couple different like textures as well, like finer and then a little bit grittier. This is a little bit on the grittier side, so I'll go in and you can see like there's still like lumps and stuff on these corners.
Yeah, it's not perfect.
Yeah, it's not perfect, so I'll go in and like do the real
fine tuning.
Yeah, I guess the fine tuning on that, and then just kind of start rolling that edge over with this. And then once I have the main shape that I want, I'll go in with the orbital sander and then give everything a finished texture so it all looks the same.
Are we running 80 grit on the orbital?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the finish that you'll get right here. Just finished up the other armrests, and you can't even tell which one's which anymore. They look exactly the same, which is exactly what we want. I'm not going to show anything about making the other one of these. I'll tell you one thing on how we got the radius right here. I ended up just using a piece of PVC pipe and bending this around until it was really close. From there, I just took this piece and put it on the end like you saw me bend these, and I just did a little section at a time. That way you don't see any big bends at once. It's kind of consistent all the way throughout. And then once I did that, we just started tacking it and then bending it as we needed to, and then just went through and blended it as we did these. Like I said, I still need to go get a hole saw and finish off the top piece, but that's all these have left for them. And then we can get the main pieces of metal and start attaching these to it for the door panels. Let's start over here, because I'm going to show a piece of metal.
I'm just going to zoom in. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Can you see it?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I went ahead and stopped by Competitive Metals and picked up a 4x8 sheet of aluminum to finish the door panels. This is 16 gauge, which is like 63 thousandths thickness. And it's the 3003 series, that's just the style of aluminum that it is. And this is more than enough to do the panels. Realistically, I could cut out 4 separate panels from this. So it's way more than enough and way more to do the job. But I went ahead, pulled the bug in right here. And right now I'm taking off the door panels so I can make some templates for the new panels. I got the cranks off, and now I just need to finish popping the actual panel off. It's pretty easy, you just gotta pop these little clips off with the flathead. That's the way I'm doing it. It seems to be working pretty good. Here she goes. I don't know when the last time this thing's been off, if ever. This might be the original one.
See the backside of that thing.
Not bad, honestly. So I spent a little bit of time making a template for the door panel, and I'm getting ready to cut it out with that aluminum. The first thing I did was make a piece just for the corner that matched these two holes and the curvature of this edge. That way I didn't have to make the whole panel at once, and I could start with one corner and just throw it on top of a main piece like that. So this is what I ended up making for that corner. And then here we are, the main piece right here. I just traced that other panel onto here and matched it up. So now this is the complete panel, and me and my dad traced it out so you can see it right here. Now I'm just going to take those shears and cut this thing out and then mock it back up on the car and see if we need to do any fine adjustments or whatnot. After spending a few minutes cleaning things up and drilling out the 2 holes for the cranks, things are starting to come out pretty good. As you can see, things line up pretty nicely. The panel is currently a little bit too big, but that is good. That's what we actually want, because we're going to go ahead and bead roll this panel, and when you do that, things are going to shrink just slightly. I went ahead and marked out this panel for bead rolling. This is 2 inches in from the edge, and you can see, as I was talking about, it's going to come down at an angle and flatten out right here, just to avoid these for holes for the cranks. We are using the Eastwood Elite bead roller, and we've made this mount, and it's seemed to be working pretty well. So we're going to chalk this up in there, and the tightness that we're going is we go down until it's touching the panel, and then we go 3 extra turns, and then that's where we will bead roll at, and that gives us this depth. That's all that's going to change when you adjust that. So we're going to throw this in there, and we're going to get to rolling, dude. Using this bead roller is a lot easier when you have 2 people. So in this instance, Christian was guiding the panel through while I was over here messing with the speed and holding down the pedal. So here we have our panel that we just finished up, and all the lines came out really nice. Christian did a really good job guiding this thing through, and I mocked it up on the door, and everything still lines up. A little bit further ahead, I got all the holes drilled on the panel for where we're going to be mounting it, and these do not line up with any that are on the existing door. The reason I went that route is because I didn't know how to exactly transfer all these holes to that piece, and it would have taken up a lot of time. So what I did is just made it so one's here, one's in the middle, and then one's a little bit offset over here. So none of them line up, and it's less mounting holes as well, so it just makes things a little bit easier. In total, I'm going to be running 10 quarter 20 Allen head bolts on this panel to hold it on. To hold them in the door, I'm just going to be using nut certs like I did with these mirrors right here. So if you haven't seen that video, go check that out and you'll know what I'm talking about. But basically, I'll drill the hole, slide in a nut cert, and then use a tool, and it'll expand and lock in. I just finished pressing in the last 2 nut certs, so you can see we have all 10 around the panel. And on these 2, the ones that are in line with the window, I had to make sure that those were not sticking in far enough to where they would actually touch the window. So I clearanced these 2 probably about 1/8 inch, and everything runs smoothly up and down. And bam, there's all 10 on the panel. You can see on the sides, it sucks it in a little bit and matches it to the curvature of the door, so everything's good there. And it sits within this little groove on, or channel on the door, so it looks really good. Now that Christian's gone ahead and finished up welding the panels, I've started to blend the inside corner joints. And these are a little bit more difficult than the outside corner joints because you can't just take an angle grinder and smooth things out. You have to get in here with the die grinder. This side I've already started and is getting close to being done. And this side I've just begun on. And you can see I'm starting to get the rough shape using this die grinder. I'm using these Carbide bits that I got off Amazon. Came in a little pack of 5 different ones. And this one seems to be working really well to smooth things out. Once I'm done with that, I move on to using an angle grinder. And one important thing to note is you can't use one like this that's been all rounded off. You have to use one with a sharp corner like this. That way you can butt right up to it and smooth things out nicely. It's definitely a little bit more tricky than the outside corners, but it's something to learn and something different, so I like that. One thing that I didn't account for when Christian and I were making these panels is the warping from the welding, and it's pretty significant. You can tell we're clamped right here, but that thing is bowed. So I'm gonna have to come in here with a hammer and dolly to try and flatten it out. I've already tried it with some heat manipulation, but that hasn't been working out too well. So I'm gonna try that, and then I might have to get an acetylene torch. That way I can anneal the metal. But hopefully we don't have to go to that point. Hopefully I can just pick up a hammer and dolly and flatten this panel out. I finished getting everything blended out, and then I've gone ahead off camera and painted the panels with Steelit, as you can see with this one right here that's ready to go back on the car. I did end up getting a hammer and dolly kit and trying to flatten out this panel, but it's really inefficient to go that way, and it would be better to use something like a planishing hammer or a machine that can do it just a lot more efficiently. So this panel is far from perfect. If I was to do it again, I probably wouldn't even use aluminum. I'd use a thin gauge steel and then have Christian use silicon bronze. That way you're putting less heat into the panel. And I think steel itself is less susceptible to warping, so you wouldn't even have that much of a risk with warping with that compared to the aluminum. But this whole project's been about working with aluminum, so I'm willing to forego that and just live with it. I may eventually just get these things wrapped if it really bothers me. What I'm talking about is, like, in here you can see there's some hammer markings and it's not a perfect panel, so that just bugs me a little bit. But right here I've mounted one of the speakers. I went and got some hardware from Ace and just drilled the holes. I have a little bit of a spacer on there, that way the magnet doesn't hit the back of the door. One other thing that I was worried about potentially was this stuff vibrating a lot on the door and making a bunch of noise. So on here you can see I have foam on the front and back. There's this piece right here, and then I have one down here, so this thing will be resting on some foam and it won't tend to vibrate against the metal as much. I went ahead and wrapped the car up the other day, but I wanted to wait until daylight to show you guys the finished product. So here we are with the panel all painted and all the accessories back on. I think it looks really good with the chrome on gray accents. But you can see we have both sides back in the car and everything's back together finally. Again, these things aren't perfect, but this whole project was about learning how to work with aluminum a lot more. And it was cool to see everything go from SolidWorks onto this panel. So overall, this was a really fun project, and I'm glad that Christian and I decided to do it. That's gonna wrap it up for this video though. If you guys liked it, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.
Oh yeah, what the?